Hello, my beautiful nerds. Today we are going to focus on getting into Robot Mesh. And what I want you guys to do, because we're not going to be able to meet in person for the foreseeable future here, we need to build our robots still. And since we can't be in the robotics room, we are going to need to build our robots virtually. And this is where Robot Mesh is going to become our best friend. So this robot is what we are going to build right now. Well, not really a robot, but this small piece of a chassis is what we're going to build today. I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks that will get you on the way to building a fantastic robot. And help you learn some of the design skills that you're going to need. And hopefully, my hope this year is to get us back on track with really high quality engineering notebooks. So this is the first step to that. Let's get started. First thing you want to do is open up Chrome. And if you haven't already, go ahead and look for Robot Mesh Studio. So it's robotmesh.com/studio. And you need to create an account. You can go ahead and create an account with your student email. And once you have an account, you will be set to go. So if you don't already have an account with Robot Mesh, pause this video now. Go find robotmesh.com/studio. Create an account with your student login and get that up and running. Then come back to this video. Okay, next step. After you have your Robot Mesh account, you are going to need to make sure that you have a particular setting turned on in Chrome. So we're going to go to Chrome://settings. There are multiple ways to get here. This is just one of them. So in the settings page, you are going to look for hardware acceleration. So use hardware acceleration whenever available. You're going to want that turned on blue. This is going to be important for rendering the Robot Mesh Mimic once we get it going and having a smoother experience. Robot Mesh is still not perfect, but it will give you a smoother experience. Just note that if you're on a laptop, when you turn this on, it is a huge battery suck. So it will drain your battery very quickly. I turn this off whenever I travel, but if you have, say, a GPU in your computer, this allows Chrome to access the GPU and make Robot Mesh run much more easily. So make sure that that is on when you're running Robot Mesh Mimic. Okay, let's get back to Mimic. This is our goal for today. Our goal is to build this quarter of a chassis, and hopefully in building this, you will get the basic skills in order to design the rest of the chassis. We will talk about coding our virtual robots in another video. Today, it's just building and designing the robot. We can also test our robots and actually run them in a physics environment. We'll talk about this problem with the screws here that are just floating in the middle of space a little bit later. But we can see that with this robot, we can even test the motors, and we can drive our robot around, and we can watch it. Let's see here, zoom out a little bit. We can watch it move, and if we can get it to go right, I can make it do circles here. There we go. Whee, going around in circles. Let's get going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to My Projects. I already created this ChangeUp version 1.0, which is what you just saw. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project, version 1.1. So we go to New Project. Our target is going to be a V5 Mimic, which is this option down here. Then we're going to go over to our language. We're going to be using C++ as our language. It's the language we've been using for the last few years. Python's a slightly more accessible language in terms of ease to write. However, we can't use Python on all of the different platforms. So if you want to program your robot in Prose or in the Vex Coding Studio, those languages, Python's not as available there. And then any other options, I'm going to go ahead and call this ChangeUp. Spell it right. ChangeUp version 1.1. So the first place it's going to take you is this coding screen. And this is where we will eventually write the code for a basic program. This is not the competition template. So when we write the code for comps, we're going to need to use a different template. But for basic operation of our Mimic bot, this is where we'll write that code. We also have a description section. This is like a digital version of your engineering notebook. So anything you're doing design-wise, I highly recommend you make notes about things you want to do, about notes to other people with sharing your project. And you can share your project in Robot Mesh. We'll go over that again in another video. For now, I want you guys all working on your own. So let's get started in Mimic. Here we are on the Mimic screen, and I will link to some basic videos about what the tools are. I'm not going to go over what every single tool is. I'm just going to go over them as I use them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Options, and we are going to change the arena. Note that adding the arena to the render area will significantly slow down the rendering of the whole project. So if your computer's already struggling, I like to turn on the field to get myself started. Then once I have a reference of where flat and level and where my robot's going to sit in the field, I turn off the field. The robot stays where it is, and then the computer will run a little bit easier. So here's my field. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. That's another thing. You're going to want to use a mouse. You can use your trackpad, but it's going to be hard. So we use the mouse click to rotate, and that's the left click to rotate and the right click to translate. In building a robot, I like to start with the wheels. This is not conventional to how we would build a robot in the real world, but the way that Robot Mesh does its test drive, we want to render the wheel on the ground. So we're actually going to start from the wheels. And when we start from the wheels, it will put it in the middle of the field flat like this, which doesn't work for us. So I'm going to go up to the rotate tool, and you'll see that it puts this sphere around that yellow snap point. And snap points are going to be very important for us later. So when I click on one of the sections of the spheres, it will rotate in that direction that's highlighted. So you'll see the one that's highlighted turns yellow. And using the middle grid here, it's going to snap on every 45 degrees, I believe. If you want to snap on 15 degrees, use a small grid. And I believe this grid is every 90. Oh, no, that's every 45 for the big grid. So big grid every 45. Then I'm going to go over to the translate tool. And I'm going to select the red arrow to move only in the up and down direction. I'm going to look, is it about on the field? Almost. I'd rather be a little bit above than below. And I'm using that mouse click to check, translate. Yeah, it looks like I'm just hovering above. Okay, perfect. So I have my first wheel. This will set the height of my chassis. the best thing that I've found for building a robot from here is moving part by part and using these yellow snapping points to align parts as we go. So from this first wheel, I am going to go ahead and go to common. I'm going to take a 4-inch shaft, and you'll see it automatically puts that shaft right on that snap point because I had it highlighted. So immediately I know my shaft is going to work on that wheel. Okay, so I'm going to select the shaft here. And if you look at the shaft, it's just a whole bunch of snap points, which is really cool. So I'm going to select a snap point. I'm going to go to my C channels, and I'm going to make a 25 long C channel. So there's a 1x2 by 1x17, almost the right size. There's a 1x25. And that one did snap, but not where I wanted it. So this is where I'm going to use the automatic tool. The automatic tool makes life easy for these kinds of movements. So I'm going to select this, and you'll see every one of the holes on the plate or on the C channel is a snapping point. So I'm going to grab the snapping point I want. I'm going to put it on the shaft. And I'm going to move around and see it's not quite as close to the wheel as I want. Oops, getting rotation there. Oh, and now we're getting way too much rotation. Come on now. There we go. Oh, there we go. It's not always the easiest task. Sometimes you're going to move a part in a way that you don't intend to. And we're going to slide it over so that it's nice and parallel to the ground. And there we go. We have our first bit of the chassis. So then we can hit test drive. And look at that. The physics renders it as the shaft falling down. And the wheel is just able to support it. We'll stop the test drive. And we'll continue building. So first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to support this wheel on both sides. Remember, whenever we have a shaft rotating, we need it supported in two places, as 2 points define a line, if you remember from your geometry classes. So we always need to define a line. So we're going to get kind of close there. We're going to rotate it. Oops, not myself, but rotate the bar. Good. And you'll see this little button right here. This little button flips things by 180 degrees. So it gets us in the right orientation for our C channel. I'm going to click on here, grab this snap point, and put it there. Good, grabbing that snap point, move it a little bit closer. So now we're right around the wheel. Great. Okay, so standard practice whenever we have a shaft going through a C channel or any kind of plate is we're going to want to put a black thingy on there. Black thingies are under the common section in our library, and they're called bearing flats officially. So there is our bearing flat, and I'm going to grab this snap point back here. So you'll see that there's two sets of snap points on bearing plates. I'm going to take that one and snap it right to the plate and the shaft. So one thing that I found is this combo tool right here gives us great access for rotating and moving and sliding parts around the field, but it won't always snap things. And that's where the auto tool comes in. Because the way that Robot Mesh works in the test drive section, it's only going to recognize parts or render parts as a single piece like this when they've snapped together. So if you use the basic rotation, the basic translate, or the combo tool, you can get parts really close, and it's good for that. But when you want to finally place a part, I highly suggest using the automatic tool, because that will guarantee that your snap points are actually snapping, and that way they're connecting programmatically in the test environment. So I pointed out in the original robot that I showed you those screws that were hanging midair, and this seems to be a bug in Robot Mesh, that screws don't seem to work with black thingies. I don't know why. So if you put a screw in here, you would expect that if we put this screw in, I'm going to click on the wheel, click on this little hide button, and that will remove the wheel for me to be able to work on it or work around it, but it will keep it there as when we go to mimic it or again, or if we want to see it, we just click on that button and it shows everything. So I clicked on the screw, and if you notice carefully, I clicked on this little plus button and it made the screw longer. You can do the same thing with like the 25 bar. I can make it longer, and I can also make it shorter. So I have this here, and I'm going to take a hex nut, and I'm just going to place that hex nut right on the screw. Now, if this works like my last mimic, when I test drive this, the nut comes off and the screw is just hanging there midair. I don't know. So black thingies don't need screws. So don't bother with those. Next thing is we're going to want to put another wheel so that the other side of this bar doesn't fall down. Okay. So first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to shorten that up so it's the same length again. I'm going to click on the wheel. And I can rubber stamp it. And then I can, if I'm lucky, click and drag. I'm going to get out of the automatic tool because it's going to lock me on that shaft. I'm going to move the basic translate. I'm going to grab just the arrow. So if you notice on the translate tools, you can select just the arrows when they turn yellow, or you can select these little planes, which allow you to move in two directions at once. But I want to make sure I'm staying level, so I'm going to select only the arrow. Move myself over, translate down a little bit. Move over just a little bit more. That should be good. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead, give myself a little bit more room. I'm going to aim for this hole with the shaft. So if I'm lucky, nope, it didn't. So we're going to grab this. We're going to go back to the automatic tool, click it, and move it into this spot. Again, I'm going to take the automatic tool and just move this wheel to guarantee that it is on the shaft and it's locked together both visually and programmatically. And now test drive again. Always good to test drive this. And look at that. It stays up just as we want. Okay. So now we have two wheels. We need to put some motors on here and make it run. If we're in the common section, we already have the V5 motor here. So I'm going to be in the automatic tool. I'm going to grab the V5 motor and, oops, it's going the wrong way. That's all right. We're going to click it there. We're going to click the opposite tool, click rotate, rotate around. It locks it in 90 degrees. Perfect. I'm going to click on that snap point now. And with any luck, nope, it's rotating. Control Z to undo. And nope, I'm still on the yellow. We're going to get rid of, we're going to hide that wheel. Hide it, please. There we go. And now we can get in here at an angle that's going to be a little bit more conducive to snapping these points too. Actually, I found it's sometimes easier, there we go, to grab the snap point in here. So one thing about the motors when you're using shafts is that the shaft has to be all the way through this snap point in order for the shaft to be programmatically part of the motor. And the shaft can be way inside of there. You'll see it's far beyond what would actually physically be possible. And then we're going to take a couple screws and we're just going to lock a couple screws on there. And when I'm in the automatic mode, that's how easy it is to put on screws. See, they're just boom right there and they lock in. Okay, and we're going to translate over to the other side and do the same thing. We're going to go ahead, select the wheel. We're going to hide the wheel, take a V5 motor, put it on there. We're going to flip it around. We're going to rotate it, and then we're going to translate it in. And we're going to throw a couple screws on it. Test drive, and hey, there we go. We have our working quarter of a chassis. So we're going to go ahead and stop the test drive, and let's talk about a couple of other tools and things that you're going to want to use for building the rest of your robot. So you do need to use screws and nuts for building up from this platform. So once you've built your chassis, or even building across to the other side of your chassis, you're going to need to use screws. It's part of the way that Robot Mesh renders it. It's only black thingies that seem to not need screws. Oh, we forgot to put a black thingy on this side. Let's put it right there. There we go. Okay. So now that we have this quarter of a chassis, let's go over to this group section and look at some of the things we can do here. So I like the groups for when we start to build bigger and bigger robots. So we're going to go ahead and click in here and create a new group, double click on it to change the name. So it looks like this is a right side, we'll call it right chassis. We'll go ahead and save that. And I can only select one thing at a time. Although if I use a selection tool, I can select more. So then we're going to add all of these things to right chassis. And then I can lock them together. So now when I select anything in right chassis, it's going to select the whole right chassis. And then I can rubber stamp it. And now I have 2 copies of right chassis. And I can, if I'm lucky here, let's use the translate tool. I now have 2 copies of it. And the wheels might start turning on how quickly we can create a full robot. So we've got that. We're actually going to use this tool to rotate around. And now we are almost there with our full robot. We've got 2 halves of our chassis ready to go. Bridge those pieces together, and we have them as these 2 groups. I can click on this one. I could click on each of them and add yet another group to create the entire chassis and have, I believe I can have nested groups. Let's try it. Yep, there's a nested group right there. So I can take this group and I can probably let's see here. So I'm going to go here, and then I am going to select this and add it to that. There we go. That's how we do it. So you select the other group and add it to the overall group. So this is his chassis. So just in case I'm learning this right on this video here, just in case you missed that, I clicked on the group, so it's highlighted in blue, and then I went to the master group that I wanted to add it to and clicked the add to group button, this plus button, and it added it to that group. And then I could color the chassis. So if I want to, let's say, unlock this, I'm going to select this part of the chassis, and I'm going to select, say, just that wheel. I can make this wheel blue. So this is really helpful for if you want to delegate who's going to build what parts of the robot. You can delegate it by group. You could color different parts of the robot and say you're going to build the blue parts, someone's going to build the red parts. You can also have camera views that you save, so you can keep looking at the snapshots of the same position of the robot. If you want to move to basic positions, hitting the space bar moves you around the robot in basic increments. I'm not sure exactly what they do as it's basically top, right, left, front, rear, so on and so forth. So this is it. These are the basic tools that you need. There's lots of tutorials out there. Make sure you're watching the most recent tutorials because they do change the tools in this every once in a while. And let's make a deadline of the end of August for everyone to have a fully working robot. So let's break that down a little bit. Let's say 2 weeks into August. So let me pull up my calendar here. First day of school is the 10th. So let's go ahead and say by the 21st, everyone hopefully will have a working chassis. And then that next Monday or 2 Mondays from then, the 31st, the end of August, we should have fully working robot designs. And I want you guys to work independently. Come up with different designs for trying to solve the game problem of picking up and moving these balls and knocking them out of cages. There are even some game balls in the renderer. I don't believe these are the exact size of the balls in our game, in the change-up game, but they do give you something to work with and something as a basic reference for how to build and manipulate an object in Robot Mesh, in the Mimic. Okay, I'm going to come back in probably a week or two with how to code your robot. For now, just build, just design your chassis and mechanisms for manipulating the ball. All right, my beautiful nerds, I will see you in the next video. Hopefully we can be on campus soon, but let's keep the robots alive digitally while we cannot. See you all soon.